Let's
I'm
try.
here with Sylvaine to talk about her latest release, a beautiful EP that comes out on March 22nd on Season of Mist. I know I'm going to absolutely butcher the name of it, but I'm going to give it a go. Framand.
Yeah, not bad at all. It's good.
Was it
Good job.
okay?
Yeah, it was absolutely good.
I,
Yeah.
I, I honestly really, I've already pre-recorded my review of the EP. I went track by track, which was very bold of me because all the tracks are in Norwegian, the titles. So
Yes.
I honestly felt like I actually put a disclaimer at the beginning saying that, hey, I'm going to butcher these names, so I don't want to upset any Norwegians watching the video. But I wanted to give it a go. I wanted to give it a try.
Good job. Yeah, that's always cool. We appreciate that. We understand anyways. Also, I should mention that all of these titles, except for a couple of them, which is my own pieces, are in like a very old dialect from a certain part of Norway. So even people like from Oslo might have a hard time with those. So, like pronouncing exactly correctly. So don't worry, you're not alone at all.
You're
So
making me feel better. I appreciate it. When I got this EP for review, first of all, I love your music. I think you know that. I honestly really enjoy listening to you either be on record or obviously live. You have a way of transporting me into a completely different universe with your music, and it's a universe that always makes me feel super welcome. When I got this EP in my hand, the first thing that I notice is, everything is in Norwegian. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about it even before listening to it. And the first thing that I did was I Google Translate the title, and it came across as "I am foreigner." Is that a correct translation?
yeah, it's something along the lines of I am a stranger, or
A
I
foreigner, yeah.
am strange, or I am a foreigner. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's correct.
So knowing a little bit of your background in terms of where you were born and what your ancestry is, does the title of the EP have in any sort of way a connection to your own person, to your own history?
Absolutely not. But it could have been. It really could have
Ah,
been. But
you just
no, it
broke my
doesn't.
heart.
Sorry, I just like broke the illusion. No, actually, it really doesn't. It's more of a reference to kind of a spiritual sense of like not really feel like you belong to this world or this plane, so to speak. And it's something that I talk about a lot in Sylvain since the beginning that I started this solo project. So yeah, it's not about being an immigrant. Basically, even though I was actually technically from since I was born in the US and I moved to Norway, but very early on, and I've lived other places as well. But no, it wasn't that this time. Not this time.
See, because I grew up in Portugal, I was born there. I moved to Canada, and my experience has been of being a foreigner in two different countries now. Because
Yeah,
in Canada, even though I'm a citizen, I still feel like I am a foreigner. And when I go to Portugal to visit my family, even though I was born there and lived there most of my life, I feel like I am a foreigner there. So I
yeah.
have this ability of feeling like a complete stranger in two different places. And when I saw the title, I was like, "Well, maybe she feels the same way as me. Maybe we have something deeper, a connection that brings us together." Turns out I was completely wrong.
Oh my God, I should have said yes and left it like alone.
No, no,
Of course.
the beauty about music is that this art is yours until the point that it goes out. Once it goes out and I listen to it, I can interpret it in any way that I want. So for
Absolutely.
me, this album is about me being a foreigner.
Absolutely. And it can be that. It can literally be that as well. Like it's just because the way that I saw it was not necessarily maybe that way. It definitely, I mean, if you're talking about foreigner in a certain country or in a certain city, or if we're talking about a certain world or sphere, that's basically still the same concept of being foreign somewhere. So yeah,
Yeah, I think
that's
it's just a feeling of detachment from where you are, from your
exactly.
surroundings. So
That's
that
it.
could be physical surroundings, it could be spiritual surroundings. I think there is definitely a connection there. So I'm going to take that as a win. I'm going to mark
Yes,
that as a win
do
for
that.
me
Absolutely.
instead of a loss, and I'm gonna move forward with it. So what inspired you to create this EP? Because it's very unique. I mean, you're unique in the way you make music, but this EP I felt it was even more unique. So what had inspired you?
I've been wanting to kind of delve into the world of Norwegian folk music for quite some time, actually. And even when I was like back in uni, like in what 2000 and what was it, 2012, 13 or so, and we did this like trip to a special like academy that dealt with folk music. It was a part of our like, you know, education basically. And yeah, I've always been in touch with folk music through my life and through the different studies I've done within music. I always found it interesting, not something that I wanted to dedicate my expression to fully, but something that I wanted to kind of maybe incorporate some elements from, and which I have actually done throughout this solo project, basically as Sylvain. I have had small things here and there from the Norwegian folk music, but I wanted to really kind of take a deeper dive into it and like see if I can do it my own way and like, you know, but still be respectful of the tradition, because there's a long heritage of this folk music existing for many, many centuries, and it's a pretty rich and vast tradition. Like it's been around for a long time. Every region of Norway has their own version of it, and like certain things that are specific to each region. And it's also like, you know, it's folk art basically, so it's not like written down or anything of that sort. It's been kind of handed down from generation to generation. And that in itself, I think, is very, very interesting. It's a bit like folk tales or that kind of thing, where it's like we are the ones that keep this art alive, basically, which I think is really interesting. And it also has like a very organic development when it's being reinterpreted from person to person, instead of having like in classical music, you have the sheet music and you have the description of how it's supposed to be played. Of course, every performer will perform it in their own version, but still with folk music, it's very much you a bit more free, because there's no kind of fixed way. There's a certain way that has been done before you, but it's not necessarily something that this is the correct way to do. So I've been wanting to delve into this world for some time, and I kind of got slapped in the face when I discovered the title track of this record, Ega Framand, as you so nicely pronounced just a little while ago, back in 2021. It was actually quite recent. It's not that known, this one. I know only a few recordings of this specific Norwegian folk music track. But it's still a really old one that we don't really know where the origins come from. Like, again, folk arts is kind of hard to pinpoint who made it or where it exactly came from. But we know where the lyrics came from. It was written by a person that was into theology as well, and like doing like psalms and stuff like that, and writing for church music, basically. And anyways, meeting this track, Ega Framand, it was a complete like trauma, but in the best possible way. It was like, rarely has music touched me as much as this piece did from the moment I heard it. Of course, the performance was really something as well, so that helped. But the melodic language, the lyrics, everything just spoke to my soul, basically. And it made me wonder, is there something more in this kind of religious folk music pool that I haven't really been that much in touch with? So it made me start to do research a little bit in like last year. And the idea was actually to just record the title track as a single or like a standalone thing, because I used to, after I discovered it, I performed this sometimes live, basically from time to time at the end of our shows, when I felt that it was the right moment and the kind of the magic was in the air. And I did that all over the world, basically. And the reaction was always very much the same. People were just like super um, respectful, silent. People seemed very touched by this piece, which is really nice, because so was I. And that's even without understanding the lyrics in addition. So I kind of fought back and forth between should I record it or not, because I kind of like the idea of it being this kind of like fleeting thing that only happens in the moment when it's right, when I feel it, and not having it being like an eternal thing. But then I decided that if I do it in the right way, in the worthy way, it would be very cool actually to have this piece, because it means so immensely much to me that it would be kind of nice to pay homage to that, and do it and record it. So from there, that kind of escalated when I found the location for that. It kind of escalated and turned into a full EP, where I ended up doing 3 traditional Norwegian folk music songs, all from the religious segment, because there's also other, like, you know, entertainment segment, there's communication segment, there's different like purposes for this kind of music. And 3 of my own compositions as well. So the inspiration behind it was basically wanting to explore my musical heritage as a Norwegian a bit more, and to dive into this tradition that's so rich and so vast, and see if I could make it my own, but at the same time keep a respectful approach to these kind of magical melodies that have been existing for decades and centuries, basically.
Was it challenging for you to go from the research that you did and keeping in mind what you said, that you wanted to keep it respectful. So was it difficult to find these songs and then kind of create the bridge between where they are and where you in how you want to present them? Was that a difficult process for you?
I would say that this record is probably the easiest, has been the easiest one to make of all of my albums, actually, in a way, because I was very, I mean, of course, because half of the material already had pre-existing material, basically. I mean, it was already things that existed. I had to take it and make it my own. And I changed and transformed things or composed parts that I added in the middle or at the end. I made it my own, but at the same time, it's based on stuff that's already existing. So that obviously is a part of why it was easier. But it was very, the whole process was very free, actually. I tried to not give myself boundaries in this project. My heart said, I want to keep it organic. I want to keep it kind of, like I didn't record any of this with click tracks. I didn't do like a million takes of each vocal part or whatever, or organ or guitar part. I tried to keep it like, a bit more sparse, a bit more direct, a bit more honest, and like keep some imperfections in there because I felt that that made it kind of perfect. I mean, perfect doesn't exist, but you see what I mean. Um, so yeah, basically, I think that it was a quite enjoyable process. I had a lot of fun and I felt really liberating making this record. And I feel like it was what I needed to do after I released Nova, which was like a battle from the moment it started until the moment it ended. And I'm vastly proud of this record now, even. And I'm not usually the person to say that about my own stuff, but I really, really am proud of what that record was. But Ega Framand was actually like a pleasure to make. Like I got to go back to my roots of like, being in this church recording. I had no idea what I was doing again, like trying to figure out, learning by doing and just being on my own for like hours and hours, like figuring out, tinkering with stuff, learning how to play some parts on the organ and stuff like that, because I've never played an organ before. Having fun with that. So I would say that it was a very, how can I say, it was a very natural process, this record, and how it became and how it came into to exist. There was one song that I actually had a little bit of like a internal, like, should we actually release it this dark of a version of this track? And that's track number 3, that's called Eg veit I himmerike borg, which is a very famous, probably maybe the most famous religious folk music piece we have
It's a
in
very
Norway.
dark song. It came across
Very
very,
dark.
very dark, and the
Yeah,
atmosphere and everything is just a very dark experience when you listen to that song.
that's what I was questioning myself, is that the right way to take this on? Because I mean, I'm sure that nobody has heard a version of this song like that before. But I was often questioning how, if this is right or not. But in the end, it felt like it was actually, or else it wouldn't be on the record, obviously. Uh, and I also kind of, again, tried to not overthink too much and let myself feel in the way that I needed to. And even though the lyrics are actually kind of like, I changed the lyrics in all the existing songs because I didn't want them to contain traces of Christianity and religion, because it's not something that I personally believe in. And I don't have anything against people that do. Therefore, I want to respect them by changing it. So I'm not singing God or Jesus when I don't believe in these things myself. So I rewrote the lyrics to have it more on a spiritual side, using words like light or stuff like that. Um, and basically, this song is very much like a song of praise, and like, but it also has that, that the title literally means I know of a place beyond that is like, that's only light, where there's no sorrows, there's no woe, no tears are shed, no, no pain is felt, that kind of thing. So it has the dark side too, because you're trapped here in this human sphere and you can't reach that place. You're disconnected from your origin, so to speak, which I believe that place is our origin. And it has that dark side too. And even if it's a dark and somber version of that song, there's always some light and hope in there as well. So it needed to be like that. It needed to be the one on the record that was a bit like, it took on a bit more of a bombastic, kind of dark, somber tone, because inevitably life on this planet is very much built up of opposing forces, and that includes light and darkness. So yeah, I think it was a very uh, liberating record to make. And I think I managed to stay respectful to the heritage of the tradition that's in this music, but at the same time make it like 100% my expression as well.
And
So
here I am thinking this is all about immigrants. So it just goes to it just goes to show you.
again, it's
But
yours
you know what?
now. Come on.
Let's just agree to disagree. It is what it is.
Absolutely.
You're gonna have a very good laugh when you watch my EP review, now that you know what my take on this whole thing was. But I saw on this EP a little bit of the continuation of what you did in Nova in terms of the atmosphere and some of the lighter sounds of that record compared to some of the lighter sounds on this record. Where I saw this record going in a different into a different arena was that obviously was a lot more vocally driven and a lot more vocally demanding. And when I was listening to it, I was like, wow, a record like this leaves no room for error, because you cannot hide behind a heavy drum. You cannot hide behind a heavy guitar. There's nowhere for you to hide, really. It's just you're using your voice on this album in two different ways. You're using your voice as a narrator that's telling a story, and you're using your voice truly as an instrument that creates the background of what normal instruments would do for you. Having the ability to do those two things, did you approach them differently when it came to the recording? Did you look at, okay, this is the part that I have to tell the story, but this is the part where I have to use my voice more as an instrument? Or like you said, was it maybe a little bit more organic, where you just flew from one into the other?
That's a very good question, actually. But I don't think it was like a conscious choice of, okay, this is like the narration part, like we have to get back to story and like tell the story a bit more. It was more of an organic approach, and more of like, how did I want to tell the different parts of the story? Like the first track obviously has the Dagsens Auge sluknar ut. It has the whole part, the whole beginning part that is basically introducing the story of Ega Framand. And then you have the ending of the song, which I composed myself, that's just choirs and like, kind of like like you said, like this kind of sphere of instruments, although it's kind of just made up of a couple of different instruments, but it sounds like a whole like universe of things. Next song is then, the continuation of that, but where it's kind of still in between, because it's obviously there's no lyrics for that second track at all. It's just ad lib, or like, improvised syllables from my side that still have a little bit of that Norwegian twang to me when I listen to it. I'm still like, the syllables sound like they're pronounced in a Norwegian way, but it's technically it's nonsense. There's no actual lyrics, which is something I've done on all my records, actually. So it's just something that kind of naturally flowed throughout the album. Like some moments I felt like I need the words and I need the voice to be like upfront to really kind of grab the attention and to bring the listener on the path of this journey. And otherwise, I just want them sometimes to just kind of like, all of a sudden the person disappears into the woods and they're like left alone and they have to like walk through the landscapes themselves. So it wasn't something that was like super conscious in that sense, that I was like wanting to have narration parts and then like instrumental so-called parts. But it's something that I've actually played with in music since day one in Sylvaine. It's basically, I love using the voice, pushing it a bit, like, being able to use it as a synthesizer, being able to use it to layer, to create atmospheres. I love the fact that you can take guitar, synth, and voice, and you mix the three of them into a new instrument that doesn't sound like any of them and all of them at the same time. And I do this quite a bit in my music, actually. And with Ega Framand, obviously the voice has a more dominant character because it's one of the few instruments on this record. This record is basically only voice, organ, guitar, and synth. Because the percussion that was made for this record, I think was, if I'm not wrong, was also synthesizers mixed together. So it's a very like sparsely instrumented, that's not a word, but I think, but basically there's a sparse amount of instruments on this EP. And since my voice has forever been like my main instrument since I was a kid, even if I had a big period of time when I was like pretty afraid of this instrument and was really freaked out by it. When I was a kid, I used to sing for other people in like kindergarten or at school. Then there was that period when I couldn't even sing for myself. And then I came out on the other side of my teenage years and discovered that, no, actually, I need this form of expression to feel like myself. Even now, if I don't connect with that enough, I start to feel off somehow. So I feel like I've always been really focused, I have to say, I guess, on layering and vocal layers and vocals in general, because it's an instrument I feel very close to. So it's something that's very natural for me to be able to give it like a very important role, or the role for this EP, I guess.
One last question for you, and that is the song Tas Mork. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah,
Um, that song has such what I'm trying to magical. There's a sense of magic behind the sound and behind the experience of that song. Obviously, I don't speak Norwegian, even though I'm 2% Norwegian, so shame on me. But that song had this like it just felt almost out of this world. It had a very magical tone to it. Is there a magical piece to the story that that song is representing? Because it really it made me question it.
that's so nice. Thank you so much. Like from the beginning of making this EP, like this piece always spoke to me like so much. And it's like very simple, nothing too crazy, but I don't know, there's something about it that I always like really, and I feel the same as you. Like I feel it has a kind of magic fairy tale vibe to it. And so the word tusmørke in Norwegian, it actually translates into something like dusk. So it's like kind of the moment of the day that to me feels very magical. Like, you know, when light is kind of fading away and that veil between the two worlds, let's call it that, becomes a little bit thinner. So it's supposed to be that. It's like, you know, that moment of, I mean, if you want to be very a realist and very unromantic, you would say it's the moment of the day when your senses are trying to, like, you know, adjust, and maybe it makes up things. You see things that aren't really there, stuff like that. If you want to make it a bit more romantic, it would be the time of day where maybe, you know, those magical spirits or sprites come out to dance among the trees, among uh, the leaves, you know. And that's basically something that I also wanted to reflect in the song, like that's kind of magical hour uh, before light is still present, but yet darkness is definitely looming and it's approaching. And you have that balance between light and dark. You have those opposing forces working together to create this like new dimension that's just really magical. So yeah, you're very right, absolutely. And again, it's complete nonsense lyrics. There's no actual,
Really?
well, true. It's not true, actually. There's one word in the whole that's actually a real word, and it's actually more Swedish than it is Norwegian, and that's the word home. Hem. I repeat that throughout this piece, but otherwise it's not. There's no lyrics. It's just syllables again that are completely improvised, like just you know, stream of consciousness, kind of whatever I felt like doing came out, except for this one word home that keeps repeating.
Wow, that's impressive. I mean, for me, everything sounded Norwegian, so for whatever that's worth, I'm just happy that all of these songs I got one right. At least I got the feeling right. The rest I was way off. Like the title track in the beginning, there's a little bit of like a water sound or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, you know, like it sounds to me like water, almost like water running, or like there's a little bit of a sound that to me at least it felt
Ah,
like
yeah,
water.
yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's the water of the oceans that separates us. Oh my God, I took this on a completely different level. So
Cool
grab
though. What makes music so magical is that, you know, there aren't any limits and there's nothing wrong or right. Like that's, as you said, I make it with my story, but then when I've made it, you know, and I've released my story, I give it to the world and now it's yours and you can do with it as you want. And that's so cool. I'm so excited to see this review. Like, I'm really
because
excited
to me
now.
that song like it really like the aroma of that water coming in, the way the song sounded, the translation. I honestly feel like I live in this world that's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, with one
Mm,
country on one side, one country on the other, families
mm,
on both sides, and still feeling completely disconnected from both. And I felt like this for a very long time. I felt like this since I moved here. So
mm.
since I was 18 years old, I've never felt like I've belonged anywhere. There was a lyric once that I heard in a song that said that feeling alone surrounded by friends. I always feel that way, either be my friends here or my friends there. I've always felt this sense of loneliness. And the older I'm getting, the more that sense of loneliness is becoming a driving force behind everything that I do. I try to escape from it a lot, and I'm finding it harder and harder to escape from it the older that I'm getting. So when I was listening to that song, it took me to that place. It took me to I wouldn't say it's a dark place. I mean, it can only be as dark as you allow it to be, but it definitely took me to that state of mind. And then listening to the whole record up to that song, that's the closing track. It was such a journey for me, but I think it was a journey that I took on my own path with your music as the soundtrack, but I kind of blazed my own path with it. And while my path might be different from yours or what you intended or what drove the creation, I don't think that takes anything away from the impact that the music had on me as an individual.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. And I think the two are actually really related. Even if it's not maybe from the same starting point, they intersect because I totally agree. Like this track for me, that's why it's so haunting, you know. It's partially for me at least. It's there's not a melody I know that's maybe as lonely as this one. There's this extreme sense of loneliness, but also peace and serenity is here to balance it completely, which is something that I found really interesting about this specific track because it's a traditional Norwegian folk music piece that speaks, that sums up within its like a few verses. Like I sang three of them, yeah, three verses, everything that I wanted to say with Sylvaine as a project, which is just like, what? You just have to, you know, again, maybe take out the religious, organized religious context and put in a spiritual context, and it's literally what my project, my musical solo project, is about in its entirety. And in that, even if there's lots of light and there's lots of beauty as well, there's an omnipresent loneliness always, because as you said, you know, uh, always feeling alone. Like you can be surrounded by people you love, you can be surrounded by as many people as you want, but inside, you always feel like you don't belong. And I know that feeling. I write music about that feeling lots.
Yeah.
So, as I said, maybe different starting points, but we intersect there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, right there,
Yeah,
together.
and I think that's why I love your music so much. It makes me feel like I'm not alone, if that makes sense. I know I'm sounding redundant, but somebody
No,
else feels the same way as I do, and finding somebody that has that same feeling allows you to connect and allows you to feel like, hey, you know what? I'm not going through this by myself. And I think that's an important aspect of your music, at least for me. That's where I'm coming from.
that's so beautiful. Like I'm sorry in a way that you're in that situation because I know how it feels. I know how lonely it is, but that right there is the reason why I want to keep making music. So thank you so much for that.
It was a pleasure talking to you today. Let's chat a little bit if you're not too busy at Inferno in a couple of weeks when I see you there.
Absolutely.
Let's have a little chat because I want to find out from you at that time if you have any plans on returning to North America. So we'll talk then. I already took enough of your time today. So thank you once again. It's an absolute pleasure as always, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. By then you'll be able to see my review and you can have a laugh when we see each other.
Yeah. No, I'm actually like sincerely very curious because it's always really interesting to see how other people take it from their point of view, you know. So yeah, I'm here for it. So
All
100%.
right. I appreciate your love. I really do. I really do. Thank you very much. All the best.
Pedro, have a good day and I'll see you in a few weeks.
I'll see you in a few weeks. Bye.
Bye.